In a small coastal town, where the waves gently kissed the sand every morning, there lived a girl named Olena. She worked in an old bookstore with narrow aisles and the smell of paper that always reminded her of the comfort of her childhood. Olena loved to watch people, how they choose books, how they hesitate between two novels, how they shyly smile when they find what they are looking for. One autumn evening, a boy, Andriy, came into the bookstore. He was a tourist who had come for a few days to escape the noise of the big city. His coat was a little wet from the rain, and there was a kind of quiet fatigue in his eyes. He looked at the shelves for a long time, and then asked about the book he had been looking for a long time, an old edition of Lesia Ukrainka's poetry. Olena, unexpectedly for herself, felt a warm interest. She liked his attention to detail, his soft voice, and the way he carefully held the books, as if they were alive. They started talking. Andriy said that he worked as an architect in Kiev, loved to travel, and always tried to find little secrets in every place. Cozy cafes, little-known museums, quiet streets. Olena shared her dreams of writing her own book about the people she met every day. Andriy suggested taking a walk along the embankment after the store closed. The wind played with her hair, the sea made a quiet noise, and the conversation flowed easily, as if they had known each other all their lives. From that evening on, they met every day. They drank coffee in the morning fog, read poems aloud on the shore, laughed when seagulls brazenly stole their croissants. But deep down, Olena was afraid. Andriy had to return to the capital. And indeed, in a week, he had to leave. They didn't make any promises. They just stood at the station for a long time, holding hands, as if afraid to let go not only of each other, but of the moment itself. The days without him were empty. Olena went to the sea, but the waves seemed colder. One morning she found a letter in the bookstore. Andriy had left it in the same book by Lesia Ukrainka that he had bought. In the letter he wrote that he could not forget her laughter, her eyes, and the peace he felt next to her. He invited her to Kiev, although he understood that her life was here. Olena hesitated for a long time, to leave her hometown or to take a risk for the sake of an unknown future. But one winter day she still bought a ticket. When the train arrived, Andriy was waiting on the platform with the same smile that had first touched her heart. He held out his hand, and she realized that she had made the right choice. Several years passed. Together they opened a small bookstore cafe in Kiev, a place where her love for books and his ability to create a space that breathes warmth came together. Their relationship was not ideal. Sometimes they argued over trifles. Sometimes they silenced for hours after difficult days. But every time they found a way back, through sincere conversations, small surprises, and the belief that true closeness is born not from grand gestures, but from small, everyday moments. One evening, when snow was falling quietly outside the window, Andriy handed Olena an old book, the same one with which it all began. Between the pages lay a new note. "Thank you for finding me among thousands of stories." 2 more years passed after that evening with snow and the note. Olena and Andriy lived, it seemed, in harmony. The bookstore cafe flourished. Visitors loved them for their sincerity and warm atmosphere. But as the business developed, came new difficulties. Andriy began to receive large projects from the capital's developers, which demanded his full dedication. He often worked late, went on business trips, and their evenings over books and tea became increasingly rare. Olena was also absorbed in work. She was preparing her first book, collecting stories of people who came to their cafe, and working on the manuscript at night. Their paths seemed to diverge, not in feelings, but in the rhythms of life. Once light conversations now sometimes turned into short exchanges of news, and instead of joint walks, they most often just sat in silence over a cup of coffee. One spring day, Andrei received an offer to work abroad, a year in Barcelona, in a large architectural studio. It was a dream, a chance to create a world-class project. He hesitated for several weeks before telling Olena. When he finally dared, her heart sunk. She was proud of him, but the thought of them being apart for a long time again frightened her. Their conversation that evening was long and difficult. "This is your chance," Olena said quietly. "But what will happen to us?" "I don't want to lose what we have," Andrei replied. "But I also don't want to live my life and regret not trying." They decided not to make hasty decisions. The following weeks were like a test. Every little thing gained weight. Every day seemed short. Olena tried to imagine life without Andrei by her side, and Andrei tried to imagine a world without their mornings together. Finally, Andrei accepted the proposal. On the eve of their departure, they sat on the balcony, looked at the evening lights of Kiev, and were silent. They were both scared, not because of the distance, but because of the fact that time and new circumstances could change them. The first months of separation were difficult. Time zones, different schedules, endless video calls instead of hugs. Olena immersed herself in work on her book, but at night she missed the sound of his footsteps in the hallway. Andrei, among the warm streets of Barcelona, saved a photo of their cafe on his phone and reread her messages to feel at least a little bit of home. One evening, when Olena was returning from the bookstore, she received a call from an unknown number. It was Andrei. "Open the door," was all he said. She rushed home and found him on the doorstep with a suitcase. "The project is not finished yet, but I realized that success is worth nothing if I lose us. We can find a way together, even if we have to give up some big plans." Olena silently threw her arms around his neck. They both knew this was not the end of dreams, but a choice that meant more. To be together, even when the world offered brilliant opportunities. A few months later, her book was published, and at the presentation, Andrei stood next to her, holding her hand. He did not give up his architectural ambitions, but now they planned new trips and projects together, agreeing that no distance could come between them. And when the smell of fresh coffee and the rustle of pages sounded again in the same bookstore cafe, they both understood that a real relationship is not just about romantic beginnings, but about the daily choice to stay together, even when the world tests them for strength.
Years passed, and the lives of Olena and Andrei continued to change, just as the seasons changed outside the window of their bookstore cafe. After the release of her first book, the world seemed to open new doors. She was invited to literary festivals, given interviews, and readers wrote letters of thanks. Andrei, inspired by her success, also took up his own projects. Smaller but more heartfelt, he began working on the reconstruction of old Kyiv houses, transforming forgotten courtyards into cozy spaces where every stone breathed history. Despite their successes, they both knew harmony is not permanent. Sometimes weekdays covered them with a wave of fatigue. Olena would be late for meetings with readers. Andrei would spend hours at construction sites. There were evenings when they met at home for only a few minutes, and yet even in these short meetings there was something important. A look, a touch, a silent "I am near." One autumn morning, Olena woke up earlier than Andrei, and looking out the window at the slowly falling leaves, felt a strange peace. Her new manuscript was almost finished, but this time she was writing not about others, but about herself, about their story, about the path from a small riverside bookstore to their shared home in Kyiv. She wanted not just to tell their journey, but to convey the main discovery, that love is not an escape from the world, but a force that helps to accept it. In the evening, she read an excerpt to Andrei. "True love is not afraid of distance, change, or silence. It grows when we learn to see each other as we are and do not let go even when it would be easier to leave. Andrei was silent and then said quietly, "You know, I dream that someday our children will read these lines and understand happiness is not a perfect fairy tale, but a life lived together." That evening they sat on the windowsill for a long time, looking at the city and making new plans. Not grandiose, simple. To open another small bookstore by the sea, when it all began. To go to Barcelona together, this time not for work, but for walks along the narrow streets. To plant a tree in the courtyard of their house. Their future did not promise cloudlessness, they knew that. But they learned the main thing. Love is a choice that is made every day. And as long as they chose each other, no distance, no new project, and no trials could destroy the world they had created together. A world with the aroma of coffee, the rustle of pages, and the quiet but unwavering we.